This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Something I find really fun about The Incredibles is to note how terrible Syndrome is with his own inventions. Every time he uses them, he messes up. First by not realising there's a bomb on his cape, then he accidentally flings Mr. Incredible away into the distance.
Brilliant.
Then he assumes his scanner will be correct about Mr. Incredible's termination without checking further. Then he immediately loses his remote when fighting the robots. You know, this tells us two things. The first is Syndrome has never truly practiced with his inventions, never trained, never fought with them, and never really mastered the power. Because of course, he's all about looking powerful, getting to feel powerful and heroic rather than actually putting in the work to truly be that. In my opinion, it doesn't matter his powers aren't innate gifts, he can still be a hero with gadgets, however he's never really worked to be that, just demands to be seen it. It's very fitting the threat he's heroically saving the world from is his own manufactured one. He just wants to feel rather than truly be heroic, which will be a very important point as we come to discuss Mr. Incredible. Bob Parr. His psychology and what it teaches us about fulfillment, about family, about midlife crises. Although, just to add before we begin, Syndrome also gets sucked into a jet turbine due to his cape, which Ed the Mode famously told us is a mistake. Capes are a liability. They were a liability for Buddy at the very beginning of this movie too. He should have learned that lesson from his own experiences. But he doesn't. He's not putting the work in to really reflect on his own experiences, be better in this role, which is just a great way to highlight how little Syndrome has actually moved forwards. He crafts an entirely new identity with entirely better gadgets, but at heart it's exactly the same idea. Syndrome has earned presumably billions of pounds, but has learned nothing. So yes, I am a therapist, and today we're discussing The Incredibles. Not the second movie, because I haven't actually seen it yet, but I will do soon, because over the next however many months it takes, I'm going to be making videos on every Disney Pixar film. There's so few of them I've ever seen. I'm actually really excited about that, but we're starting with The Incredibles. Let's begin with a cool train. Now, we see in the prologue of this film that Bob is at the peak of his game. He says everything with such a kind of sly smirk and cool composure. He feels on top of the world until a bunch of lawsuits begin against supers, and gradually their worship is dismantled, they're all pushed into hiding, and Bob is forced to live what feels like a very ordinary, banal life to him. He works at Papers, Please, in a job he hates because it denies him the thing he most wants, which is to save people, to help people. And even on the occasions he does help them, there's no reward or validation for it, because they have to pretend he hasn't helped them. What's going on for Bob? There's really two aspects to it. One is the external, the other is the internal, and I have more about it to say than you might think, but we're going to start with the external because that's the pretty obvious points, such as Bob used to win all sorts of glory. He was a hero. He was a beloved celebrity. It felt infinitely better for him to revel in the love of the wider world than it does to be a total unknown, and we don't need to explain why that is. His gifts as a person are things he is no longer valued for. Nobody cares he has super strength. Beyond what's obvious from his appearance, nobody knows he has super strength. He doesn't get to help or save people's lives to the same degree. Bob feels undervalued. His life feels repetitive. Most of his conversations with Helen are either an argument, or else it's her trying to talk to him and Bob ignoring her or avoiding her. His conversations with his kids, especially Dash, are focused on Bob wanting to live vicariously through their powers. To see Dash at the top of his game, to see him experience the same greatness due to his abilities that Bob is so missing.
They caught you on tape and you still got away with it? Whoa! You must have been booking. How fast do you think you were going?
You know, as Helen repeatedly shouts when they talk about Dash.
They keep creating new ways to celebrate mediocrity, but if someone is genuinely exceptional,
This is not about you, Bob. This is about Dash.
It's not about you!
So, it's not bad that he's positive about Dash's abilities, but you don't want that to be their only connection, and for it to be largely motivated by Bob's own desires and own longing here. Bob feels a bit stuck and hollow, and is spending his time with Lucius secretly listening into police scanners for crimes they can help foil or people they can save. But as much of a high as this feels, it's also drawing Bob further away from his family, not just because Helen finds out and is upset, but because he's creating a real split in his life, where the things he loves loves have to be totally separate from his family, have to become an escape from them. How quick he is to get out of the house when Lucius arrives.
I'll be back later.
Hey, where are you two going?
It's Wednesday.
Bowling night.
Hey, Helen. Good day, kids.
When your family starts to feel like something to escape from, then you're in danger of seeing them like a chore, you know? It becomes too easy for Bob to forget everything he loves about them that isn't related to his own longing for the super life. And that's what's so interesting about Bob getting this new job beating up scary robots, because on the surface, this at first appears great. Bob is happier, he's healthier, he's earning more money, which obviously removes a lot of financial stress. He's feeling valued in this work, and I think we can either argue, depending on how you want to define it, some of his confidence and self-esteem are back, or else his ego. There's certainly some of that sly, smirking coolness returning, and he's feeling more of a drive, which isn't a thing I expected to say about a children's movie. But the film hints he and Helen are having a lot of sex around this time, and I think part of that is Bob feeling more desirable again, now that he's playing out some of the superhero fantasy. Adds to that, we see him kiss Violet, play scale electrics with Dash, throw an American ball for him, so great all round, right? Earning more, happier, better husband, better father. Arguably, the only thing wrong with this is that the career isn't a stable one. This is actually Syndrome trying to kill him, and also that Helen will be sad if she finds out. I think that's kind of Bob's feelings on the matter. This is all a good thing. It's a shame I have to lie to Helen, but I have to do that because if she knew, she'd stop me going. And she'd stop me going because she doesn't understand how important this is to me, which, of course, she can't know. You've never really explained it. But that sort of conclusion, I'd rather not lie to her, but so long as she doesn't find out, then what's the problem here? It doesn't matter. I disagree with this. I mean, I think lying in general is already a problem, but also beyond that, I think there's still a deeper problem as well that we can explain, but to do so, we need to discuss the internal. We need to discuss the kind of life, the kind of space you want to build. Yep, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform for building and growing your website and online business, which of course means everything you need is all in one place. Securing the domain, designing the site, promoting it, getting paid, all of it can be done here, but what's most impressive, I think, is how easy it is to use. Here is footage of me testing it out from the first 30 minutes when I signed up. I didn't need to watch any tutorials, it is all just so intuitive. Add elements, drag and resize everything smoothly on this grid design to keep things aligned properly, change the colours, add pictures, adds a load more stuff. Very, very soon this is going to be a functioning website where I will sell my poetry book. I'm just waiting to check on how the print of it looks before I proceed, so watch this space, this Squarespace. I love how simple it is to put together a contact form or even put together a shop page. Here's what my book looks like. So if you want the best domain name at an all-inclusive price, if you want integrated SEO tools, if you want a giant scrolling list of all the things Squarespace offer, then click the link in the description or the pinned comment for a free trial to Squarespace, and if it suits you nicely, then use the code MyLittleThoughtTree to get 10% off purchasing your first domain or website. Squarespace. The thing that's interesting about Bob is that at the start of the film, he's the one who wants to settle down and have kids. Helen doesn't want to.
Settle down, are you kidding? I'm at the top of my game. I'm right up there with the big dogs. Girls, come on.
I think I just like the simple life, you know, relax a little and raise a family.
And on the one hand, this is entirely unsurprising. Bob is likely not imagining himself as the stay-at-home parent here. He's imagining he still gets to do largely all the same things he always has, just a bit less so. The kids are something fun to come back to at the end of the day, after saving the world. The kids aren't something to get in the way of it, you know? With how much he keeps delaying on their wedding at the start of the movie, insisting he's still got time for every other crime that keeps occurring, you can tell he's not fully committed to what the reality of raising a family will probably mean. Where Helen is taking up the perspective that raising a family would mean she would have to quit her work in order to focus on them. This is the more traditional model of the wife staying at home, and that's not something she's ready to do because, like Bob, she draws a lot of value and achievement from her work. But nonetheless, it happens. They have kids. Helen throws herself into the sacrifice. She hides her powers without a problem, encourages her children to do the same. She is not harking back to her own glory days. She is a bit stressed and tired because raising kids is hard, but at least as far as we see, she's doing pretty well here. Bob, however, is not doing so well, and I really enjoy the touch that he goes out bowling with Lucius every Wednesday, and Helen takes no issue with that. She lets Bob have that, but he's not doing so well. what's the difference? I think this is the kind of place where a couple like this can often get into an argument of Bob stressing how hard his job is compared to Helen staying at home, and Helen stressing how hard raising the kids at home is compared to Bob's job, and kind of getting stuck in that cycle. Whereas, we see a lot less about Helen to really know her experience as much, how she was as the world changed, but we certainly can talk about the midlife crisis in relation to Bob. In a midlife crisis, a lot of different things are going on, but one of them is more recognition that you are aging. You are losing time and space that you once had. You have a finite amount of time. You know, when you're a kid, you're always looking outwards. You're growing. You're getting to try out all sorts of different things, getting to be different kinds of people. As was the young Bob's catchphrase,
I've still got time.
but that obviously changes as we get older. You don't have time, both literally and conceptually. I'm 30 now. Long gone is that vague dream I used to have in the back of my head about becoming a famous footballer, earning money from skateboarding, or being an astronaut, or whatever else I wanted to be. Once upon a time, sure, I was doing nothing to work towards any of those ambitions, but they still felt possible in a hazy, dreamlike sense. Where now I cannot prop up those illusions. Those futures are totally lost to me. There's no getting them back. There's no time in the sense I'm physically too old to be an athlete, and all the years it would take for me to master it anyway, I would never get there. And also there's no time in the other sense that my life is more filled now with, having a family, trying to afford a home, trying to pay bills. I can't just go off and follow whatever ambition out of nowhere. The recognition all of those doors are closing or have closed for me is an unpleasant one. There's so many lives any of us might want to live, but we only get one. The awareness of that fact can feel kind of paralyzing. The two ambitions I'm still bravely clinging on to are becoming a successful author and getting to keep growing this channel and hopefully do this for the rest of my life. But yeah, as you get older, those imagined futures, those different identities start to thin down into a more solid person, and you realise, this path I took. This is my life now. This is where I am. Bob and his family had previously kept relocating to new homes, Bob getting new careers, but he can't keep doing that now. His family is settled. He doesn't want to do that again. And realising this is very much the path you took, it suddenly begs the question, is this the life I wanted? Did I choose this? Is this who I am? Which is a very, very difficult question to be plaguing you, but also an important one. Because think about childhood. I know we're veering off from The Incredibles right now, but this will factor into the film. In childhood, most of your purpose and the things you do derives from other people, pleasing them, earning their approval, being guided forwards by them or encouraged on. And then when so much of growing up and school is so goal-oriented with getting good grades, being celebrated for the success, getting a good job as a result, pleasing your boss, earning a promotion. Sure, a lot of the time that's about wanting to earn more money, but a big part of the work is centered around pleasing other people. But what about pleasing yourself? Did I truly choose this path for my own reasons, or was it out of some idea to please other people? Did my parents set me on this journey, or did I just feel it was the most practical method to earn a bit of money, or were my friends going in that direction and it looked fun? Was I trying something out at a time that seemed cool, but maybe it wasn't what I wanted forever? Have I been chaining my motivation to pleasing my boss when there's more I want from life than that? A midlife crisis is kind of about that switch in mentality, where you're now going, okay, I have a finite amount of time on this earth. I want to make sure the life I'm living has purpose now in it for me, before it's too late to find purpose. And the problem then is often getting overwhelmed by this feeling and trying to jump to a very easy solution, often sabotaging and ripping up your existing life in the process. Be that suddenly wanting a new partner to prove that you're still a desirable person. It's not just that your existing partner has gotten used to you, that they feel it's too much effort to change. No, it's that you are actually still desirable, and you seek that validation off someone else to prove that. That can kind of happen. It's no accident there's this vague sense of flirting between Bob and Mirage this film. No accident Helen finds one of her hairs on Bob's suit. It draws up all of these sorts of feelings. They of course don't have an affair, but there's certainly some amount of flirting with the possibility. And this too might be a part of what does leave Bob coming home feeling more desirable and confident and excited to be with Helen. Or there's people suddenly diving into a completely different career, which of course Bob is also doing. Or there's looking back at past glory, all those past lives you were once able to live and all their possible futures, which yes, Bob is definitely doing. Or there's you know, it's the overblown stereotype, but I vividly remember my mum buying a Harley Davidson motorbike and my uncle telling me, don't worry, this is just a midlife crisis thing. I don't know if it's at all a coincidence that I bought myself a goujeng when I turned 30 and suddenly became incredibly motivated to learn Italian again. We want these quick fixes to prove to ourselves that we still have value, we still have freedom to do things, still feel like we matter and like our lives can have purpose. But the problem for Bob is pretty much all of the things he's seeking out here are things that also separate him from his family. None of them involve his family or the life he's grown to be living. It's about going away from his family. And sure, he does come back from his trips in a much more happy, energized mood to connect with them, but is this family involvement in quite the same way? Is this Bob really valuing and seeing the fulfillments that they give to him? The reason this setup is doomed to fail, whether or not Helen discovers the lie, I think is because of this scene.
Bob,
Yeah, what's up, honey?
have a great trip.
Thanks, sweetie. I'll call you when I get there.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
He seems so withdrawn from her here. And no matter how much they might have been having sex, I don't know, and I don't want to know the answer to that question. But the depth of their relationship needs to go beyond just that. Bob needs to appreciate more of her than just that. He needs to offer her more than just that. It almost takes him by surprise when she says she loves him. As I said, there's the danger that the more he seeks this other identity as his escape, the more his family might start to feel like a chore. It's possible even Helen might start to feel stressed towards him too, as he keeps swanning in a great mood, suddenly wanting to do all the fun things with Dash that he enjoys. But when it's the difficult family moments and the kids are fighting or things are going wrong, Bob is away. Helen is left to pick up all the pieces. She has to handle all the mess, and yet he still gets to come back and be the fun one? Really? You know, so that's one reason this could be a problem for Bob. The other is because he's still mostly, not entirely, but mostly seeking external validation as this answer to his crisis. But as I said, part of the crisis is about a shift in mentality away from external validation being a core drive, away from trying to please and win approval from other people, towards searching for a deeper sense of purpose for yourself. So whilst it does feel great to be getting in shape, to be winning fights against robots, to be buying expensive cars, this also might start to feel increasingly hollow the more he lives it. Might start to feel like papering over the cracks of a much deeper problem. Might still leave him with the question of, is this what I want from life? And let's chuck in a third issue as well. Part of his eagerness for validation is built out of the idea of him being number one. He's stronger than the rest. He's the most super, the most amazing. And he works alone for that reason. No one is on his level, except now they suddenly are. Not only does he have to hide his powers and disappear into mediocrity, as he calls it, but also at home he's not above everyone because all of them have powers there. So part of this classic sense of validation he wants is also inevitably isolating him as someone on his own. Working alone used to feel great and empowering because it made him feel strong, but as he's gotten older, working alone feels less like that. And also like a lie, something he has to play out in secret. I think he knew this deep down. I think it's why he first thought of settling down and having a family. Just feeling heroic on your own isn't enough. Just being alone isn't fulfilling enough for him. So what do you do about all of this stuff? Well, from what we see in this film, it's kind of 3 points, and the first is worth expressing anyway. Bob getting to do his own stuff isn't necessarily a bad thing. We all need time and space at certain points. Me buying a goujeng or getting back into studying Italian, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to still feel you have agency in your life, you know? To feel you can still go, right, I want to do this thing, and then getting to do it. No matter what it is, it's important to feel you still have a sense of control over your life, and you can find that without having to tear everything up. A midlife crisis and this loss of possible futures can make you feel like you have no control at all, like you're totally trapped, and that's part of the pressure that can lead people to tearing everything up. So it's important you still do feel some agency to do whatever mad or passionate or pointless things you want to do. It matters Bob can still use his super strength at the end of the movie. It matters he can still be Mr. Incredible, can come up with ideas, can feel challenged and stimulated and able to succeed. In ways his career wasn't challenging or stimulating or rewarding, which is another caveat I should add. You don't necessarily have to leave your job if it doesn't feel fulfilling. I mean, leaving might be an absolutely great decision. I think it is for Bob. This looks soul destroying for him, but I don't want it to sound like a fixed solution, you know? You can find passion and purpose outside of your career. And this is one of the things Bob realizes about his family. He doesn't have to find fulfillment outside of them. He doesn't have to chase this old identity of the hero who works alone, because you can't be part of a team and still be exceptional. No, every member of that team can be exceptional in their own way. Rather than that stifling your inner sense of power, it could actually amplify it, because now you're part of something even greater. Bob's old boss was technically correct with his banal lecture about a team being like a well-oiled clock where all the individual cogs work together. That metaphor doesn't have to be a depressing image of mediocrity stuffed into a world where you run on the springs wound up by corporations above you. You know, this point is so straightforward, there's not even really much I can say about it. He remembers how much he loves his family and loves being a part of his family. In being part of this something greater, Bob finds deeper fulfillment and passion and appreciation. So much fulfillment here he's been missing out on by shutting himself away, trying to chase after a faded identity that on the one hand feels less fulfilling now anyway, and on the second, you can still incorporate and integrate a lot of that stuff into who you are now. Unfortunately, it's not until the middle of this film when Bob thinks his family have been killed, thinks he's lost them, that he really stops to remember how special they are.
I've been a lousy father. Blind to what I have. So obsessed with being undervalued that I undervalued all of you.
And you know, that sucks that he's been so caught in his own head that it takes what he thinks is the literal death of them to remember how much he values them. And this is the third point, this whole worry about who am I now. Spending time with the people who know you is important, who you have a deeper, more vulnerable connection to. You know, Bob has hidden a lot of his vulnerability beneath strength for this film, but it's the vulnerable moments that really connect him again.
I can't lose you again!
I'm not strong enough.
If we work together, you won't have to be.
Helen knows who he is, even when Bob is feeling shaky about it. Talk to her. Be with your kids. Discover again that who you are is already right there. At the start of the film, Bob was expecting and demanding all society to prop up his sense of self-worth with the idea of being exceptional above all others. But basically, in becoming more secure within himself, within his family, and within his stage of life, he is able to let a lot of that go. Sometimes running off on a journey of self-discovery just means running away from yourself. Sometimes it's a bit of both. And what Bob ultimately discovers is that these two sides don't have to be in conflict. You can be super and also a family man. So, as I said, I've never seen the second film. All I've heard is people telling me it's awful, don't watch it, but I am going to watch it. I'm going to watch and make videos on every single Disney Pixar film. We'll discuss them all from a somewhat therapy perspective, and for the simple fun of it, why not also add some arbitrary ranking system in? So, seeing as I have in the past already made videos about Toy Story 1, Toy Story 2, Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2, I've already done those videos, I don't need to do those ones again. Our list can now be 5 movies long at the moment, and I would place them in this order. You'll obviously have to watch the other videos to figure out why I think that about Toy Story and Inside Out, but yeah, The Incredibles is still an amazing movie with some of the best lighting I've seen in a Pixar film. The sequence where Bob hacks into the computer and discovers all the supers who have been terminated before then getting caught, that's just a phenomenally well executed sequence. In fact, so much of this film is phenomenally well executed. Wonderful cinematography. I think easily the most cinematic of the Pixar films I have seen. Is the writing itself as strong to match that though? I don't know. I mean, it's still incredibly well written, but I don't think this film whacks me with a massive emotional punch in quite the same way the others on this list do, and honestly, I don't find Syndrome that interesting a villain, at least compared to Joy or Anxiety or The Prospector or Woody himself. Syndrome is a villain that reflects one solid idea, but that's mostly all there is to him, I think, really. I put out out a poll asking what you all think though, and a huge amount of you criticised the film for reflecting Ayn Rand philosophy, which is, I think, a valid criticism, even if it's not how I interpreted the movie for this video. But maybe that's also what's slightly bothering me about it. It's not philosophy I agree with, but that, I don't know what it is. But out of 3.2 thousand votes, 65% of you said it was brilliant, 25% said it was good, and 3% said a bit flawed, which, based on the same shaky maths I used in my previous A Night of the Seven Kingdoms video, maths that many of you laughed at, but nobody offered a better method to calculate this, so I've done it again, and I've worked out that this has an overall rating of 86% for the movie. So an 86% rating from you, and ranked 5th on the list by me. 5th does feel kind of harsh actually, maybe I'll regret that later on, but comment all your thoughts, good or bad, how you would rank them. If you haven't, then check out the playlist I've made for all my Pixar videos. You can watch the ones on Toy Story or Inside Out, or indeed any other films I've made videos on if you're watching this from the future. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe, maybe even support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Luke Hoare, Michael Gallagher, Benry, Thafi, Chad Bramwell and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.